I hope everyone's well. I'm going to go ahead and this is going to be kind of as short as I can make it. If it's just even a little bit too long, then you just lose everything. So I'm going to go through this presentation. It's going to be crude. There's a lot of things I'm not happy about, but if I wait until I have something that's perfect, y'all will be graduated and working in your jobs. So let's go ahead and get started, especially for the new students. Y'all have drug worksheets, we have drug cards. What you need to know that's most important, each sequence you get a list of 40 to 50 drugs. In this case, we have 40 drugs. Whenever there's 40, the instructor is supposed to add 10, so you have 50 drugs. You're supposed to do a complete drug card for every one of those drugs. Additionally, you're supposed to make drug tables of drugs that are in the same family and then a table of drugs that are in the same class. You're also supposed to include any complementary alternative medicine that's used as an adjunct or instead of any of the medicines. I'm going to go over that in a separate, really crude looking presentation, but I have to present them separately because if I put them together, it's just too long. So I'm going to be much quicker as we proceed. This is an example of a drug card. We used to do it this way. I liked this because when students would finish, turn it in, I would make corrections, I'd give it back, then you have it to study for the PTCE. The ultimate goal of this, it's not a matter of just copying and filling in all the spaces on a piece of paper, handing it in, because your brain can go on autopilot. You can spend hours just copying something down and not even reading or understanding, comprehending, or even thinking about the material you're writing. Here, I'm going to show you how, as we fill out the drug card, and we've gone to the drug card, we tried the worksheets, and so I'll leave it to the student to decide. I do like the drug card, and I will print them on a hard stock paper for future use. Also, I realize it's the very end of this first part of our sequence, the end of pharmacology. So for all of you, we're going to still continue doing some drug cards as the sequence goes on, but for the new students in particular, we'll be very focused on this next sequence just to make sure everybody is learning their drugs correctly and doing these properly. So this is a blank drug card. I'm going to put this on a separate presentation, but this is an example of one online source that people use to fill out their information. This is the drug information from the NIH, National Institutes of Health, and you'll find when you pull up a drug, it has a list of all these topics, and you just click on the topic, like dosage form, typical dosing, contraindications. So you can use this and fill out your card very quickly. I do want you to check whenever you pick an internet source that I haven't mentioned to you. Let me know so I can share it with other students, but also so I can check to make sure that it's authentic or official. Hippocrates, this is one I recommend everyone use. This one here, it's just the best. It's got every drug, and then you're going to see the dosage form. You're going to see what it's used to treat. So here you see dosage forms. It mentions them. And then what's it treat? Anxiety, panic disorder. And then it has over on the side, it's got a column, and it's got every one of the topics that you need to fill in the box. So you just click on it, you find the information you need. This is rxlist.com. One thing about it is you'll see that it's got a consumer tab or professional. Ordinarily we'd use the professional, but you can use the consumer. Ultimately, I'm wanting you to fill out these cards. Use words you understand. Reword something using words you understand, because I'm wanting you to learn these and to memorize them. It's going to help all around with the final in the class. It's going to help, especially though, in preparing you to take the PTCE. Then Medline, this is another one I recommend, and it's published and printed at a 5th grade reading level. All of these sites you're going to find, once you find the drug, you can click on a section, it'll tell you the name brands. You click on a section, it'll tell you all the different information you're looking for. Okay, so here I'm going to give an example of the drug alprazolam. So I've looked on Hippocrates, and it's got 2 different names, but Xanax is the one that's most common. The other's actually in Europe, so Xanax is the brand name. Also, this is just a little point. Any drug that ends in PAM or LAM, it's a benzodiazepine. So this one, we see that it ends in LAM, and so it's a benzodiazepine. So when you have a benzodiazepine, you automatically, immediately, it's a CS4. It's a Schedule 4 controlled substances. So for any new students, we're going to be going through this in a lot of detail. I'll be having a video explaining the different types of prescriptions. But you're going to get to a point where immediately, if you see a drug that ends in LAM or PAM, you're going to know all of the things you see on the screen right away. So it's Schedule 4. You do not want to combine it with alcohol. Whenever you combine it with other CNS drugs, it significantly increases the potential for drowsiness or disorientation. It compromises the ability to operate dangerous machinery or drive a car. So it's used often with other CNS drugs, but it's used with caution. So the doctor needs to be mindful of any effects that the patient's experiencing. Alcohol, though, is it's recommended that a patient avoid alcohol if they're taking a benzodiazepine. And then it's prescribed for anxiety, depression, and insomnia. So that applies to all the benzodiazepines. Now the last line, alprazolam is particularly beneficial for panic attacks. So that's something unique to know about alprazolam. Alprazolam, it's a drug you need to know. That's why I picked it as this drug I'm covering, this card, because it's so highly abused. And whenever they make the PTCE, they really focus on things that are topical at the time. So your PTCE is going to include fentanyl, which is Duragesic. It's going to include hydrocodone. It's going to include Xanax. It's going to include crystal meth drugs, and even all the ADD drugs. Okay, so we've got the card so far. We've got Xanax. We've got the LAM. It's a benzodiazepine. If you notice the suffix, include that in the drug, so we call that the prefix suffix, that's the drug class, and so I just added the drug class right here. The purpose of these cards is to help you learn. You want to summarize everything briefly using your own words. You can also use abbreviations, and I have a whole sheet of abbreviations I use. If you use them and you use them consistently, then it'll save you a lot of time. You won't be writing like may cause drowsiness, do not drink alcohol. You can just put MCD or ETOH. So most benzodiazepines will have the same or similar information on their card. I think there's over 32. So once you learn the indication, contraindications, side effects, interactions, warnings of one, it's going to be very, very similar, if not the same, for the rest. That's the value in these cards, and identifying out of all the drugs which are the most important of all. Now you need to know the strengths and dosage form. Is this an injectable, tablet, capsule, suspension? So you get it. Now in the new PTCE, there's going to be 2 questions that are related to a drug's dosage form, and so they're going to be asking a question about which of the following dosage forms is Xanax not available in, and if it has tablet, orally dissolving tablet, solution, and injectable. Well, the answer would be injectable. So that's why you do this on the card. You're going to see next. This drug's available as a tablet and an oral solution. You'll see the strengths. And on the strengths, you're going to notice that I think Abilify, it had like 8 to 12 different strengths. Synthroid has about 20 strengths. So just write the lowest and the highest, and you get the idea. The point is you want to recognize on a prescription, if you see enalapril 500 milligrams, well, you'll know that's too much. Enalapril is 5, 10, and 20 milligram. And so that's kind of the concept. They're just wanting you to have a vague recollection of the strength range. Also, if you're writing everything down, every single, all the time it takes you to write 2.5, 5, 7.5, like that, you're not even going to be remembering all those details. So what's most important is that it's an oral solution. It comes as an immediate release tablet and extended release tablet, and we'll talk about that in more detail once we're back in class next, pharmacology, or at the end of the sequence, or throughout, even if it's off campus. The immediate release and extended, and then the third form, it's immediate release and extended release in orally dissolving tablets. These are tablets that dissolve on top of the tongue. If it was put under the tongue, it would be sublingual. So this, I just captured a screen capture from Hippocrates. When you click on how supplied, there you see it. It's the oral solution, oral tablet, and then oral tablet. This one says disintegrating, and then you have it as oral tablet in an ER dosage form. Notice there's not enough space to write everything down. The goal is to surmise the info for each drug to help you work and memorize. Once you've completed a handful of cards, you'll start learning how to abbreviate and simplify. I encourage you guys to even interact with other classmates. Find out what source they're using. See their style. What are they doing? Some students can do 10 cards in 2 hours, and other students have not finished a whole drug worksheet in 2 hours. You want to use your own words. I can't overemphasize. A perfect example is the definition of absorption. So if you look at the technical definition, it's pretty extensive, using a lot of medical jargon or language, and basically it's just how a drug gets into the bloodstream. So if I ask you what's absorption, you wrote how a drug gets into the bloodstream, that would be perfect. If you wrote how a drug gets into the body, that's wrong. You've simplified it, but that's not correct. It doesn't represent the reality of what you're trying to translate. So again, these are for you. They're not for me. These are for you entirely. And so I'm wanting you to create something that you're going to be able to use and study. Now next I click on dosage and indications, and it tells you the indications. Anxiety associated with depression, generalized anxiety disorder. And then you can find the most common indications in your pharmacology text or even in your notes. But you notice I put anxiety, general anxiety disorder. I didn't put the depression. You could, but it was depression associated with anxiety, so that still is covered by anxiety. Then panic attacks. So here, the dosing. You're going to see in the dosing of drugs, they're going to have an adult dose, a child dose. A pregnant woman, a pre-pregnancy, you're going to have dosage based on creatinine clearance, based on age, and then based on condition. Some people might take one a day, some people might take one 4 times a day, some people might take one just as needed if they have anxiety. You want to list the most common dosing, which in this case it's the 0.5 milligram 3 times a day for anxiety. And then if you just read a little further down, it'll tell you the 2 milligram or 3 milligram ER are for once daily to help prevent panic attacks. This is just an example of that column I told you about in Hippocrates. So you can click on, does it have a boxed warning? You click here. What drug class? It's here. The description, this describes what the tablet looks like for the brand name. Then here's the brand names. Dosage indication. How supplied, it's your dosage formulation. Interactions. So you see it's got everything. You just click on whatever you're looking for and then read through it, summarize it. So what about contraindications? Well, indication means the use. What is a drug used for? Contraindication is what situations contraindicate, mean you should not use this drug in the patient, when it should not be taken. Once again, you can go down here and you'll see contraindications, precautions. So you click on that and you can find the information. So here, whenever you see there was boxed warning and you click on it, it has the boxed warning. And in here, it's kind of unusual. It's somebody that has cardiopulmonary obstructive pulmonary disease, co-administration with other CNS depressants, which it's a boxed warning. It's used frequently with other CNS drugs. We just have to be mindful to watch the patient, ask about any side effects they're experiencing. But what's most important is it has a boxed warning for this respiratory. Also, you're going to see any drugs contraindicated if a patient's had an allergic reaction to any drug of that molecular entity. So, a black box warning is simply a serious warning. It's printed in a rectangle outlined box, just like you see here. When I see black box, I'm thinking of the black box in an airplane. This is a black box on the package insert. The contraindications make sense, so that makes it easier to remember them. I didn't put the COPD. I didn't mention. I made it as simple as possible. Pulmonary disease, co-administration with CNS drugs, and then abuse. If somebody has a history of abuse, it's a controlled substance. So all of those are in that information. You just need to learn how to read it and then summarize what's essential. If you see a multiple choice question regarding a contraindication for alprazolam and one of the options, you'll see like pulmonary distress or pulmonary disease. You'll remember it from this simple. So you want to understand what you're writing down and why you're writing it down. So here again, this is just an example of the boxed warning. It's got the black box. So any drug with a black box warning requires a medication guide. So the fact is, you really don't need both of these. You just need one. But I put it on here this way just to make sure everyone knows any drug with a black box warning is going to require a medication guide. So then, in the past, drugs used in pregnancy, they were classified as A, which is absolutely perfectly safe. That's like saline mist, glycerin suppositories. B, C, D, and then X. X are drugs like Accutane, isotretinoin, orthalidomide, which you never use it for any reason in pregnancy. Now, though, you just have to read, because the drugs, they weren't falling in gray and white categories, and so there's a lot of dispute. So now you just have to read and do your best to summarize. Now, in the case of this, it's easy, because if you'll read, I just cut and pasted. When you click on pregnancy, the very first sentence is, the use of benzodiazepine is not life-saving, should be avoided in pregnancy whenever possible. So there you go. That's all you need to know. So side effects. Don't write all the listed side effects. When they do a drug study, if somebody gets pneumonia while taking a test trial for a heart drug, it's going to be listed as a side effect when we know the drug does not cause pneumonia. So you're going to have a long list of side effects. You want to read the first few and make sure that you understand the first few, especially the most important will be the first that appears. In this case, it's drowsiness. Next, identify major and significant interactions. Some drugs, if they're affected by metabolism of a certain enzyme, they're going to be affected by hundreds of different drugs. I don't want you to get lost in trying to detail all that. I want you to remember interactions that if I said, okay, Crudy, what are the interactions with Xanax? Well, she would be able to say it's alcohol, other CNS drugs. Without having to go into details, examples, and specifics, because there are more interactions, but you aren't expected to know these as a pharmacy technician. So warnings are like the auxiliary labels. Those are the little labels that print out when you type a label, and you put it on the prescription that's going out to the patient once it's dispensed. So you think in terms of, if you were a patient, what would you need to be warned about when you're receiving a prescription for this? So that's information the pharmacist should share with the patient. You learn to look for them whenever you, in the pharmacology book, as you're reading about drugs, just notice, in particular, pay attention to see which warnings would go with that class of drugs. Which labels print. So when you type a prescription in SharpRx, look at the labels that print for auxiliary labels. It automatically generates labels that are associated with or appropriate to place on the package with that prescription. In this case, it's do not drink alcohol. Second, it's going to cause drowsiness. Now, some people, it doesn't cause any drowsiness. There's some people, it does the opposite. But overall, the most important warning we need to give patients is that it's going to cause drowsiness. Because it causes drowsiness, they need to at least be warned and mindful to be cautious driving a car or operating heavy machinery. So those are the words that are used in one of the most common auxiliary labels. Use caution operating heavy machinery or driving a car. And then do not and DC. So that's an example of an abbreviation. You're going to be using so many of the same words over and over and over that if you have an abbreviation, you can use it. It'll just save you some time and space. DC stands for discontinue. So the thing is with Xanax, if a patient's been taking it for a little while, their body's going to become tolerant or at least accustomed to it. And a sharp or just an immediate withdrawal is going to have serious consequences. So miscellaneous, that's where you add any important information you didn't have a place for earlier, or anything unique, something important that's special about that drug. Here I just put drugs that end in pamrame or CS4 benzodiazepines. So it's just all this repetition to reinforce and help you remember. Here it's available orally dissolving tablet. There's an IR and ER. Now, I corrected this card, but I took this shot before I corrected it. I also included available as solution. That's important to know. Caution with CNS drugs, and you could even reiterate alcohol. So these are much easier than you believe. It's just a matter of practicing. It's a matter of looking at other classmates. I'm going to be posting videos with several of the drugs, especially drugs from other classes and in the top 200. I want you interacting with other classmates, see what they're doing, see what ideas they have, and you're going to be amazed to just constantly learn great ways of doing something. So find out what resources they're using, look at their cards. As you see, the goal is to learn the drugs after spending so much time completing a card. The most important step is using your own words, abbreviations, and understand what you're writing down. I'm going to create more examples, but I want you guys to watch and rewatch this video until, at least if I went too fast through anything or you need to. I'm going to be providing some follow-up videos. One's going to explain why we do these drug cards and validations, and why you have to type prescriptions and fill them to validate. One's going to be on just some of the various resources. It's just the time's limited when there's audio. So I hope everything's going well, guys. You take care. I hope I don't see any of y'all on a Florida beach playing volleyball on CNN. Hundreds and thousands of college students are just going to the beach and taking classes on their phone. Take care, guys.